The first number that ended my marriage was not a date, a text message, or a hotel receipt. It was $43,712. That was what my husband wrote next to IRA on the temporary balance sheet he sent 3 days before our first divorce conference. 3 weeks earlier, I had seen that same account sitting above $1.6 million. He told me the market had turned. He told me private positions had been marked down. He told me retirement values on paper were never the same as real money anyway. He told me I was making an emotional story out of accounting noise. What he did not know yet was that I remembered numbers the way some people remember betrayal in voices. I could forget a birthday dinner. I could forget what I wore to a gala. I could forget the exact wording of the speech he gave when he raised money for children's cancer research and made an entire ballroom cry. But if I had seen a balance sheet, a mailing date, or a line item that did not belong, it stayed in my head. My name is Audrey Sloan Ledger. I was 37 when I learned that a retirement account can disappear twice. First from the screen, and then from the story the person beside you is trying to force you to believe. By the time Damon sent me that balance sheet, we were already in the quiet stage of ending things, which is more dangerous than the screaming stage because it still looks civilized from the outside. No broken glass. No public affair. No police at the door. Just separate bedrooms, careful voices, meals eaten at different times, and a man who believed that if he kept using clean fonts and expensive stationery, the collapse would count as a professional adjustment rather than a betrayal. Damon Ledger was the kind of husband who made power sound like good manners. He never raised his voice in restaurants. He never forgot a server's name. He never carried cash. He had that precise, self-contained face men get when they have spent long enough in rooms where everyone pretends money is logic and logic is morality. He worked in private equity, then in family office deals, then in that blurred world where one company sits inside another and one explanation sits inside 3 others until no one remembers where the money began. His favorite sentence was, "Complexity is not secrecy. It is sophistication." His second favorite was, "If you cannot read the structure, you should not question the return." When I married him, I thought those lines were arrogance. By year 5, I understood they were also a training program. If he said something was too technical, I was supposed to step back and feel grateful that he handled it for us. If I asked twice, I was making myself small in exactly the way he wanted. He would smile, tilt his head, and explain just enough to make me feel slow. I did not work in his world. I was the donor operations director at a hospital foundation. My job was budgets, pledge tracking, year-end statements, audit support, gift restrictions, acknowledgement letters, and the 1,000 small reconciliations that keep large promises from becoming lawsuits. I was not glamorous. I was not a tax lawyer. But I spent my life reading what people signed, what they forgot to update, and what changed between one reporting cycle and the next. That was why the number bothered me immediately. The account had not drifted down. It had fallen off a cliff. The PDF Damon sent had 4 pages. He titled it Temporary Marital Balance Sheet as if the word temporary made it kind. The house, the art, the brokerage positions, the cars, the checking accounts, the liabilities, the insurance cash values, and then retirement. Under Damon IRA, the line read $43,712. Under notes, he wrote post-correction value after year-end adjustment. I stared at that phrase so long I could feel my pulse behind my eyes. Year-end adjustment. No month. No institution. No supporting page. No statement attached. Just a number and a phrase. The last time I had seen the account, Damon had not meant to show it to me. That mattered. People think women in marriages like mine are either ignorant or secret geniuses, but most of us are just living in the narrow opening between what we are allowed to see and what we are supposed to stop asking about. I had seen the balance in late August when Damon asked me to forward one of our tax organizers to his assistant because he was boarding a flight and couldn't find the right file in the shared drive. I opened the folder to confirm the attachment, saw the consolidated family summary, and there it was on page 2. Alder Private Bank Custodial IRA. $1,621,844.12. I remember the cents because they irritated me. Damon loved round claims when he was talking to people, but the real records never rounded themselves for dignity. When I wrote back to him that afternoon and said, "Your divorce sheet shows your IRA at $43,000, he responded 9 minutes later. Paper volatility. Illiquid correction. We can explain it with counsel present. No greeting. No concern that I might be shocked. Just the assumption that explanation was a setting he could turn on later if I behaved. I was sitting at my desk at the foundation when his email came in. Outside my office window, volunteers were loading centerpieces for a donor lunch. Someone in accounting was laughing too loudly. My coffee had gone cold. The world stayed offensively normal around me while I reread the line about paper volatility and tried to decide whether anger or fear had arrived first. I wrote back, "Send the statement that supports the adjustment." He responded, "The portal is being reorganized. You'll have what is relevant for settlement." That was the exact moment I stopped believing this was an ordinary disagreement about valuation. Because if it had been ordinary, he would have attached the statement. If it had been real, he would have over-explained it. If it had been innocent, he would have wanted me to stop worrying. Instead, he gave me process. Portal is being reorganized. People like Damon always choose language that sounds administrative when what they mean is no. We had been married 8 years. No children. A large apartment with 2 views and no peace. Damon paid for almost everything visible and spent years making me feel that visibility was generosity. At first his systems felt like safety. Later they became a wall. Questions about insurance, tax packets, or account moves always ended the same way: I lacked the framework. He never had to call me stupid. He only had to make expertise sound like ownership. The week after I asked for the statement, my access to our shared document vault stopped working. I tried 2 browsers, then emailed his assistant, Celia, who specialized in sounding sorry without being useful. She wrote back, "Mr. Ledger is consolidating the household archive during this transition period. Please route any document requests through counsel." That was when the shame finally thinned enough for me to name what I was seeing. Damon was not simplifying the divorce. He was narrowing the door. That night, he came home late enough that I had already eaten. We were still living in the same apartment because New York real estate and expensive marriages both love delay. I was in the den sorting donor invoices into year-end folders because my hands needed a repetitive task. He came in without taking off his coat, glanced at the piles on the coffee table, and said, "You know this doesn't have to become theater." I laughed. Not because it was funny. Because it was exactly what a man says when he has already built the stage and wants to accuse you of noticing the lights. "Send me the statement," I said. He loosened his tie and looked at me the way he looked at junior associates who had failed to anticipate his preference. "Audrey, we are not doing this by email and hallway confrontation." "Then how are we doing it?" "With professionals." "Great. Let the professionals read the statement." He sighed and walked to the bar, pouring 2 fingers of something amber into a glass without asking whether I wanted anything. The account was corrected at year-end. What does corrected mean? It means paper positions were adjusted. Why is the account at $43,000? He turned with the glass in his hand. Because that is the post-correction value. You are repeating the note you wrote. Because the note is accurate. There are moments in marriage when you realize the person in front of you believes repetition is victory. He was not clarifying. He was waiting for me to tire. "I saw the August summary," I said. Something in his face sharpened, but it vanished fast. "Then you saw a preliminary number in a family tax organizer." "I saw 1.6 million. Approximate." It had sense. That still does not make it final. "Did you withdraw from the account?" That was the first honest question I asked him in weeks. Not careful. Not strategic. Honest. He took a sip before answering. "I made year-end moves." "Did you withdraw from the account?" You are using a small word for a process you do not understand. That sentence almost worked on me because it was so familiar. It pressed on the oldest bruise in our marriage. The part of me that wanted to be fair. The part that wanted to avoid looking foolish. The part that still thought some of my dignity depended on his willingness to confirm it. Then he added, and if you start confusing tax repositioning with hidden assets, you are going to cost yourself money. That line saved me. Because innocent people do not threaten your budget when you ask what happened to their retirement account. I did not fight that night. I let him finish his drink. I let him walk away. Then I sat in the den until almost midnight, making a list in my notes app of every place an old statement might still exist. Shared drive copies. Printed tax organizers. Backup PDF folder on my laptop. Paper files in the study credenza. The gray storage boxes in the hallway closet. There are women who leave marriages by running. I left mine by indexing. The next morning, Damon was gone before I woke up. On the kitchen island, he had left the sort of gesture that used to confuse me into gratitude: a fresh croissant in a white paper bag, a cappuccino with my name on it, and a note in his narrow handwriting that said, "We should let lawyers do their jobs." I threw the coffee away unopened. Then I went into the hallway closet and pulled down every gray storage box until the floor looked like an audit had broken into our apartment. I found summer rental invoices, appliance warranties, ugly R-transfer worksheets, one dead laptop, 2 photo albums from a version of us I barely recognized, and 3 years of family tax organizers. Damon claimed paper was for emergency reference. Really, paper made him feel sovereign. I started with the most recent binder. Wealthy men hide disorder inside immaculate labels. Tabs, summaries, tasteful logos, and a story you are meant to accept because it arrives looking expensive. The August summary was there on page 2. Alder Private Bank Consolidated Household Asset Snapshot. Brokerage, checking, private credit sleeve, art insurance rider, money market, and then retirement. Damon Ledger Custodial IRA, $1,621,844. 12. Relief hit first. Then something colder. I had not misremembered. Damon had not merely minimized the account. He had changed its existence. I made 3 copies. One to my private email. One to a thumb drive I kept in my work tote. One printed and folded into a donor file folder labeled Annual Statements because Damon would never look there. Then I looked for September. There was no September statement. No October statement either. The binder moved from August to tax estimates and year-end preparation memos like the account had taken a polite little step out of time. I called our old tax preparer's office and asked if they could reissue the family organizer from fall because I had misplaced a supplemental page. I kept my voice easy. The receptionist said they no longer held full packets because the family office had requested consolidated delivery through Alder Private Bank. She transferred me to someone named Owen, who recognized my name and became instantly less helpful. Mrs. Ledger, for anything current, we really need Mr. Ledger's office to coordinate. I'm not asking for anything current. I'm asking whether your office issued interim retirement distribution notices last year. There was a pause long enough to matter. I can't discuss any client's materials without authorization. Did you say distribution? I said materials. He had not said distribution. But he had flinched around it. That afternoon, the household card Damon told me to use for groceries and pharmacy runs declined at a market on Madison. By the time I got home with the bags paid on my personal card, his email was waiting. As of today, discretionary household charges will be reviewed weekly. We need cost discipline while counsel works through exposure scenarios. He could not stop me from remembering the number, so he tried to make remembering expensive. I forwarded the email to myself, then called a divorce attorney whose name had come to me through a board member at the foundation. Mara Ellison did not sound warm on the phone. Thank God. Warmth is overrated when your life is being rearranged by a man who speaks in compliance language. She sounded alert, efficient, and slightly impatient with drama. Tell me the shortest version first, she said. My husband's IRA was above $1.6 million in August. His divorce sheet says $43,000 now. He says market correction. He revoked access to the portal. Today he froze the household card after I asked for the statement. She did not make a sympathetic noise. She said, "Do you have proof of the August value?" "Yes." "Do you have the current statement?" "No." "Good. Better to know exactly what we have than guess. Do not accuse him in writing of hiding assets until we can pin down the chain. Save everything. No more verbal arguments. We ask for statements, custodial records, and year-end tax documents first. What if he already moved the money? Then moving it created records. That sentence steadied me. Moving it created records. Mara gave me a list before we ended the call. Old tax organizers. PDFs. Any year-end family summaries. Email traffic referencing rollovers, distributions, or tax estimates. Proof of the card freeze. Any references to Alder Private Bank or Halcyon Family Office. Then she said she wanted her forensic accountant, Tessa Grant, to review whatever I found before our first formal strategy meeting. Tessa turned out to be younger than I expected and sharper than any room should legally contain. She wore flat black shoes, no-nonsense makeup, and the expression of a woman who had made her peace with human greed long ago and now charged by the hour to translate it into spreadsheets. I met her 2 days later in Mara's office with a banker's box of copied documents and a headache that had lived behind my right eye for almost a week. Tessa spread the pages out across the conference table with the kind of quiet care surgeons use on instruments. "This is the August snapshot," she said. "Yes." "And this is the temporary divorce sheet he gave you." "Yes." "And no supporting statement." "No." She nodded once. "Then either he wants to rush you past the gap, or he thinks the gap will intimidate you. Men like this usually choose both." I almost smiled. Mara read Damon's email about exposure scenarios and the household card freeze without comment. Then she set the page down and said, "He wants you to feel like asking questions has a price." "It does," I said. "Only if you pay in the currency he prefers." Mara filed our first document requests that same week. Current IRA statements. Custodian distribution history. Year-end tax documents. Explanations for all account reclassifications since August. Supporting schedules for any claimed losses. Confirmation of any rollover. Confirmation of any withholding. Documentation of any current retirement-related liability he intended to attribute to the marital estate. Damon's lawyers responded with the kind of polished contempt expensive men outsource. They said the retirement account had been adjusted due to tax planning and liquidity management. They said formal supporting records would be produced in the normal course. They said my insistence on immediate production threatened a constructive settlement environment. Constructive settlement environment. I started saving phrases the way other women save jewelry after breakups. Not because they were pretty. Because I wanted to remember the exact language used when someone tries to turn concealment into etiquette. December arrived. Then January. By then, I was living 3 nights a week in my friend's guest room downtown because sharing oxygen with Damon had become unbearable. We still had not finalized anything. He kept pushing versions of the same offer. 1 year of apartment rent. My car. A cash figure small enough to sound kind if you ignored the assets behind it. He framed it as speed and privacy. Mara framed it as a test. "If he wants closure this badly before producing retirement records," she said, "the records are probably very interesting." The tax envelope arrived on a Wednesday morning in the apartment lobby while I was stopping by to pick up winter boots and my foundation gala binder. The concierge handed it to me with a polite little nod, one cream envelope among a stack of forwarded mail. Alder Private Bank, return address in dark gray print. Inside were year-end tax packets bound with a paper band. Not the full family organizer. Just selected documents routed for review. I took them upstairs to the dining table where I had once planned our anniversary dinner and cut the band with a butter knife. The first page that mattered was a 1099-R. I knew enough to know what it was. Not enough to interpret every code, but enough to understand the words gross distribution and taxable amount. My eyes moved down the form once, then back up, then down again because my brain refused to accept the shape of the numbers. Gross distribution, $1,580,000. 00. Taxable amount, $1,580,000. 00. Federal income tax withheld, $316,000. 00. Distribution code, 1, date of distribution, December 12. There are lies so large that your body reacts with complete stillness because movement would be disrespectful to the evidence. He had not watched the market erase his retirement. He had taken it out. Not all of it, maybe. The account still showed $43,000 and change on his divorce sheet. But the main body of it was gone because he had removed it. And while he was telling me not to make emotion out of accounting noise, the government had been sent withholding. Markets do not withhold federal taxes when they feel sad. I called Mara first. She answered on the second ring, listened without interrupting, and said, "Bring it to the office. Now." Tessa was already there when I arrived. She took the 1099-R from my hand, scanned it once, and tapped the box with one finger. "Code 1, she said. "What does that mean?" "Early distribution. Not a direct rollover." So he lied. She looked up at me. He may still try to call it something strategic. But if he was going to sell you a clean rollover story, he would much rather we hadn't seen this code. Mara asked, "Did he send this to you?" "No. It came in the mail." "Excellent," she said, and I understood that in her language excellent did not mean good for my life. It meant useful for the record. I texted Damon once from the hallway outside Mara's office. "Why is there a 1099-R showing a 1.58 distribution from your IRA on December 12? He responded 8 minutes later. "Administrative bridge. You do not understand what you are looking at. Do not send partial tax documents to third parties. Not, that form is wrong. Not, I can explain. Administrative bridge." "He knows we have it," Mara said when I showed her. "Good," Tessa said. "Let's see how hard he leans on the rollover story." The answer was insulting in exactly the way I expected. Damon's attorneys called the distribution a year-end repositioning tied to tax planning and liquidity management. They argued the account should be valued only at its post-distribution balance. Mara read the letter once. He wants the benefit of converting the asset and none of the consequence. In plain English, he was trying to change the form of marital money and pretend the old form no longer counted. Tessa asked the only question left that mattered. Where did the net proceeds go? That became the center of everything. Gross distribution gave us the amount. Withholding proved it was real. Movement would prove intent. Mara sent targeted requests to the IRA custodian for distribution confirmations, withholding remittance records, and receiving account information. She demanded every statement from September through January. She requested communication logs about the withdrawal. She asked for any rollover instructions, which she knew likely did not exist. She asked for any internal memo Damon planned to use to justify attributing the taxes or penalties to the marital estate. Damon's side resisted. Of course they did. They called the requests disproportionate. They said my fixation on one asset category was delaying settlement. They suggested we were using tax technicalities to manufacture leverage. Tax technicalities. There is something almost artistic about the way dishonest rich people talk about records the moment those records become dangerous. At home, or what was still technically home, Damon tried a different tone. He caught me in the kitchen one evening when I was there to collect winter coats and 2 framed photographs that still belonged to me. He stood by the sink in shirt sleeves, looking tired in a way that had probably once pulled sympathy out of me. "Audrey," he said quietly, "you are letting Mara turn this into a performance." "A performance with tax withholding?" "That form does not tell the whole story." "Then tell me the whole story." He spread his hands. "There was a temporary liquidity event tied to a position that predates the marriage." "Then why wasn't the position disclosed?" "Because it is not marital. The money was in your IRA during the marriage." The money represented prior value. Then why take it out in December? He looked at me the way he always did when he realized a straight answer would cost him more than contempt. Because I was trying to keep damage contained. Whose damage? He did not answer that. He said, if you keep pushing this, you are going to invite tax treatment that hurts both of us. That was another line I saved. Hurts both of us. A month earlier, I might have heard shared risk in that sentence. Now I heard a man trying to turn his unilateral decision into collective weather. You withdrew $1.58 million, I said. You do not get to say both of us like gravity made that happen. His jaw shifted. You have no idea how exposed some structures are once people start flailing. Then maybe you should have thought of that before you took retirement money out of a protected account and lied about it. He stared at me for one long second, then said the ugliest truthful thing I had ever heard from him. I did not think you would be able to read it. Not understand it. Read it. That was the moment every last sentimental thread broke. Because even then, after all the careful language, after the clean fonts, after the controlled voice and the expensive lawyers, what he finally admitted was simple. He did not think I would be able to read it. I left with my coats in one arm and my photographs under the other. The custodian records came in pieces. First the monthly statements. September, balance still above 1.59 million. October, 1.586. November, no major change. December, distribution entry on the 12th. January, residual balance in the low 40,000s. There it was, line by line, a disappearance polite enough to fit on a monthly summary. Then the transaction confirmation arrived. Gross distribution, $1,580,000. Federal withholding, $316,000. Net proceeds transferred, $1,264,000. Receiving institution, Alder Private Bank. Receiving account ending, 4418. Tessa circled the number in red. Now we have the bridge. He moved it from the retirement custodian into a bank account. Next question is what 4418 is. The answer did not come from Damon. It came from the slow, relentless boredom of lawful document work. A subpoena to Alder. An objection. A narrowed request. Another objection. A judge who had clearly seen enough men confuse luxury with exemption to stop being impressed by either. When the first Alder production hit Mara's office, Tessa and I sat shoulder to shoulder at the conference table while she opened the PDFs. The account ending 4418 was a personal reserve account in Damon's name alone. The deposit from the IRA custodian posted December 12th at 2:14 p.m. December 13th at 10:08 a.m. A wire went out for $1,220,000. Wire memo, Stonemere Harbor Opportunity Sidecar I capital call. I read the line twice. What is that? Tessa did not look up. Exactly what it sounds like. A private investment sleeve. Probably a liquid. Probably not something he intended to disclose unless forced. So he took retirement money and shoved it into a new structure? That is what it looks like. Mara, who had been reading the accompanying production letter, said, and if he did it after separation started and before disclosure was complete, we have a much cleaner dissipation argument. Dissipation. That word sounds bloodless until it belongs to your life. It means using marital assets for a purpose the other spouse did not agree to, often when the marriage is already breaking, and then trying to make the loss or transformation everyone else's problem. Damon had not merely spent the money. He had changed its costume. The second layer hit a week later. Tessa found a capital call notice in a supplemental production packet, a 6-page document on elegant letterhead from a fund administrator named Brighton Vale Services, another invented-sounding company in Damon's invented-sounding universe. The notice demanded funding by December 13th to preserve the investor's full participation in Stonemere Harbor Opportunity Sidecar I, an affiliated co-investment vehicle linked to a distressed debt acquisition. Investor name, Damon Ledger. Not Ledger Crown Capital. Not a premarital trust. Not his mother's family office. Damon Ledger. The call amount matched the wire almost exactly. I laughed once, not from happiness but from the clean elegance of the proof. He had built the marriage on the idea that complexity would keep me small, and now complexity had betrayed him with a memo line and a signature block. Did he disclose this fund anywhere? I asked. Mara slid over his preliminary financial affidavit. No Stonemere. No sidecar. No new illiquid position acquired in December. Just $43,712 under IRA and a note about post-correction value. He thought form would outrun time, Tessa said. He wanted everyone arguing over the remaining IRA balance, not asking where $1.264 million went the next day. That was the moment I stopped feeling stunned and started feeling something better. Dangerous calm. The problem was not solved, but once the money had a path, Damon no longer had a mystery. He had a timeline. And timelines are much easier to kill than mysteries. He tried one more offensive before mediation. Through counsel, he argued that the Stonemere investment reflected separate, premarital economic value being preserved under pressure. He argued that the tax burden from the IRA distribution had to be considered in valuing any marital claim. He argued that if the court or mediator treated the withdrawn amount as available cash, everyone would be ignoring real market exposure and real liquidity constraints. Translation: he wanted credit for his new investment, sympathy for the taxes he triggered, and permission to pretend the original retirement money no longer existed in a form I could touch. Mara's response was brutal in the way only properly footnoted writing can be. She attached the August statement. The December 1099 R. The custodial distribution confirmation. The Alder Reserve account record. The Stonemere capital call notice. The wire transfer. The preliminary affidavit omitting the new sidecar interest. Then she wrote, in a sentence I loved so much I almost framed it, Mr. Ledger may choose to convert a marital retirement asset into a speculative post-separation sidecar investment, but he may not erase the marital character of the funds by changing the label after the withdrawal. Damon hated being spoken to like that. I knew because he emailed me directly 2 hours after his counsel received Mara's letter. You have let second-rate professionals turn a family matter into a public stunt. I forwarded the message to Mara and did not answer. He sent another the next morning. You are going to spend more on experts than you recover. That line would have frightened me once. Damon had spent years training me to think in terms of net embarrassment instead of truth. Is it worth the fight? Is it elegant to pursue? Will the cost of insisting on reality make you look unsophisticated? But by then I had the 1099 R printed in a folder in my bag. I had the wire record. I had the capital call. And I had seen his name typed beside a sidecar investment he swore did not matter. So I wrote one sentence and sent it before I could overthink it. You did not think I would be able to read it. You were wrong. He did not reply. Mediation lasted 9.5 hours and felt like being trapped inside an expensive clock. Damon arrived in a charcoal suit with the kind of exhausted dignity men rehearse when they want to look persecuted by facts. I arrived with 2 binders, 1 black notebook, and enough anger to keep my back straight all day without coffee. The mediator was a former judge with kind eyes and no visible appetite for nonsense. That helped. But what helped more was that by then the argument had become boring in exactly the way I wanted. Not, Audrey suspects he moved money. Not, Damon says she is confused. Not, 2 spouses disagree about an investment interpretation. It was now, on paper. August IRA above 1.6 million. December 12th distribution of 1.58 million. Federal withholding. Net proceeds into Damon's reserve account. December 13th capital call into undisclosed Stonemere sidecar. Preliminary affidavit omitting the sidecar and minimizing the retirement account. The mediator asked Damon directly why Stonemere had not been disclosed. His lawyer answered first, naturally, with a long explanation about pending valuation, contingent structure, and unfinalized holdings. The mediator cut him off. Was the interest acquired before or after the distribution? There was a pause. After. Was the capital funded from the reserve account that received the IRA proceeds? Another pause. In part. Tessa slid a page forward. In the produced record, the wire amount is $1,220,000. The reserve account received $1,264,000 from the IRA distribution the day before. There are no other deposits of comparable size in that period. The mediator looked at Damon. So the answer is yes. That was the first time all day Damon lost the expression he wears in rooms. Not fully. Just enough that I saw the old private fury under the polished face. He had built a life in which people usually stopped at the first expensive explanation. He did not know what to do when women with binders kept going. Settlement talks narrowed after that. The revised framework treated the IRA withdrawal as a unilateral post-separation conversion of a marital retirement asset. The gross distribution amount mattered because Damon had chosen the tax event. The sidecar did not get to become magically separate just because he liked its new wrapping better. The penalties and tax consequences tied to his chosen withdrawal strategy stayed with him, not with me, except to the extent already reflected in ordinary return mechanics. The missing sidecar interest had to be disclosed and valued as part of his post-distribution asset position. In plain English, he was no longer allowed to say the money had simply gone away. It had gone somewhere. That somewhere belonged in the settlement math. The final result was not a movie ending, and I am grateful for that. Movie endings lie about paperwork. Real financial reversals come in increments and signatures and pages initialed in blue ink by people who wish they were elsewhere. There was no moment where Damon broke down and confessed everything in a marble hallway. There was no dramatic gasp. There was no judge delivering a speech about justice. There was a revised settlement structure. There was a corrected equalization payment. There was a fee contribution. There was written language stating that the December IRA distribution and subsequent Stonemere funding had been considered in valuing the marital estate and in allocating tax responsibility. There was the quiet but delicious fact that the taxes and penalty consequences of the withdrawal sat where they always should have sat, with the man who pulled the trigger. My final correction value, once the pieces were lined up, came to $842,000 between cash equalization and the shifted fee burden. Not half his world. Not some fantasy triumph. A correction. A real one. Enough to buy distance. Enough to rebuild with. Enough that when I signed, I was signing under my own light. The first place I moved after the settlement was not grand. A rental on the Upper West Side with decent windows, weak water pressure, and a closet too narrow for the life I had brought into it. I bought my own kitchen knives. I changed every password. I rerouted every statement. I opened new accounts at an institution Damon had once called provincial, which was exactly why I chose it. For weeks, I kept expecting fear to return in its old form. The fear that I had been difficult. The fear that maybe he had understood more than I ever would. The fear that if I had only been more patient, more elegant, more trusting, none of it would have escalated this far. It never came back that way. Sometimes anger came. Sometimes grief came, but it came for smaller things than I expected. A silver frame. A black cashmere coat he picked out once when I still mistook curation for intimacy. The habit of hearing a key in the door at 8:10. The particular shape of winter light in the old apartment. But shame left. That was the real dividend. Months later, one of Damon's assistants accidentally sent a calendar invite to my old email address for a Stonemere portfolio review. I laughed so hard I had to sit down on the floor of my new living room. Not because I cared anymore. Because that was the whole marriage in miniature. He spent years insisting his world was too sophisticated for me to read, and in the end even his assistants could not keep the paperwork tidy. I deleted the invite and then, out of habit more than paranoia, saved a screenshot into the folder where I kept the final settlement documents. The folder was thick by then. August statement. Divorce sheet. Card freeze email. 1099, R, custodian confirmation. Alder reserve account. Stonemere capital call. Revised settlement pages. You do not survive a man like Damon by winning an argument. You survive by refusing the story in which he is the only person allowed to define the meaning of the numbers. The last time I saw him in person was outside Mara's office after our final signatures. He was speaking to his lawyer in a low voice and turned when I came down the hall. For a second, there was no performance on his face at all. Just fatigue and a kind of sterile resentment. You made this far more expensive than it needed to be, he said. I held his gaze. You made it traceable, I said. Then I kept walking. People always think my victory line came outside Mara's office. It didn't. It came much earlier, alone at my dining table, holding a tax form he never thought I would understand well enough to fear correctly. Markets do not withhold federal taxes when they feel sad. Everything changed once I knew that. The rest was labor. Necessary, expensive, slow labor, but still labor. I still work at the foundation. I still notice dates before faces, account tails before excuses, and quiet inconsistencies before anyone wants them named. On difficult days, I take the black folder from my desk drawer and reread only one page. The 1099-R. It did not care that Damon was charming or sophisticated. It just sat there and told the truth in boxes. Gross distribution. Taxable amount. Withholding. Date. Sometimes that is all justice looks like. Not a speech. Not a confession. Just a form that says what happened in plain enough language that a man who built his life on complexity cannot hide inside it anymore. He thought tax language was fog. He thought I would be too tired, too embarrassed, or too dependent to keep reading. He was wrong on every line that mattered. The account disappeared from the screen. The money disappeared from the wrapper. The story disappeared from his control. And in the end, the simplest page in the room was the one that took it back.